While it is always a scary day to be a Texas Longhorn fan, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em horns, we get the dub this week. It is a close one, but now we got to turn our sights over to week 9. We have some updated projections now that we know, Clayton Tune's going to be the starter for the Arizona Cardinals. Joshua Palmer is not playing. Obviously, we have a lot of injury updates, but we are going to be looking at the Underdog Pickems for these projections. In my mind, best place that we can be looking, because if you're just looking at your ESPN app, hell, ESPN has nothing to lose if they are wrong with them. However, on Underdog, they have a lot to lose, right? Because you can go out there and you can take the higher, you can take the lower. So they better be putting out some pretty good pick'em lines. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this. And we don't really care too much about the Lamar more than less than half a total yard. I would assume that he does have at least a total yard. And of course, if you think that's a safe bet, you can find that over on Underdog Fantasy. Links in the live chat, links in the description, links in the comment section. So you'll find all these pick'ems. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and the Lamar Jackson special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. So make sure you take advantage of that with code FLOCK. But let's go ahead. Let's move this down. So with Tua, you're starting him regardless, right? Going up against KC in, a Germany game, but it is what it is. 282.5 passing yards. Total yards for his pick'em. You're starting him. Jeff Wilson Jr. will have a role. Not startable though. Raheem Mostert will be someone that you have to put in there. 64.5 total yards is pretty low when it comes to his yardage total, but we just know the reason you're starting these Miami backs is not because of what you get with their yardage, right? It's more so just the overall touchdown opportunities in Miami. So you have to start them. Jalen Waddle, you're starting regardless. They've been 68.5 total yards. Tyreek Hill, you're starting regardless. Don't know why I'm wasting your time with this. Now, going over to the KC side of things, Mahomes, you're starting regardless. Let's skip past that 316.5 total yards. Very interesting to see them be this aggressive with Isaiah Pacheco's pick'em at 83.5 total yards. I actually wouldn't mind taking the fewer than. If you're going back to that baseline, we are just looking at Raheem Mostert at 63.5. I would say based off this projection, though, you probably do have to go ahead and you probably have to start Isaiah Pacheco. Now, going over to Kelsey, we play Travis Kelsey. I wouldn't mind going saying, no, Kelsey's going to have a backup game. Kelsey is going to have a touchdown this week. And I don't know. I said backup game, bounce back game. If I can speak here now, MVS not startable, Tony not startable. Those guys aren't even rosterable. Rashee Rice would be really the only other player that you consider starting in this offense. Rashee Rice, the issue is obviously not really going through and running a ton of routes. You have to be a little bit hesitant to say that he's the must-start guy. They have met 45.5 total yards. Moving beyond this, don't care about the defensive options. Now, going over to the Seattle game, typically are fine starting Geno Smith based off how good the situation is. Very tough matchup going up against Baltimore, though, where Baltimore's dead last in points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. So they only have Geno at 21.5 completions to 243.5 total yards. Geno probably not someone you want to start this week. Going over to what we have with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker probably not someone that we're too excited about starting either, just because the very tough matchup. They only have him at 67.5 total yards. You're having to start Kenneth Walker. It's just you have to be a little more hesitant than you typically would be. Very tough matchup for the receivers here. They have Tyler Lockett at 49.5 receiving yards. Probably want to bench. Metcalf's the guy that you can start. He had 14 targets last week. They have him at 60.5 total yards. But going back to what we're talking about, I believe you actually have the Ravens as 6-point favorites in this game or something ridiculous like that. So, it's going to be hard to start too many Seattle guys. Lamar, they have at 273.5 total yards. Obviously, with the rushing, you have to start him. Now, going over to Gus Edwards, with Edwards, I'll reiterate, if you're playing in a non-PPR format, I think you should be very excited. However, in a full PPR league, that's probably not what you're looking for. You see that he only has 3.5 receiving yards for his underdog pick'em. I know a lot of people are going to think that's crazy. It's a running back that 2 weeks ago had 80 receiving yards. There's a reason it's there. Gus Edwards has averaged fewer than a target a game so far this season. So I think you start Gus Edwards probably as a low-end RB2 in a full PPR format. You're not excited about it. Non-PPR league, obviously, start him with confidence. You're starting Andrews regardless. Zay Flowers, I know, has been iffy. Still getting the majority of the volume here. Zay Flowers, they've had 59.5 total yards. If you wanted to go through and take the fewer than 59.5 total yards, not going to fault you, but he is someone that you have to go through and start, ladies and gentlemen. Now, moving over to the Rams side of things, we don't know if Stafford's going to play or not yet, so can't really look at that too much. Now, with Aaron Jones, this is a running back that they're quote unquote unleashed this week based off the reports that we were getting from this coaching staff. It looks like Aaron Jones is someone that you are having to play, and he is fully healthy. Christian Watson, I'd rank more so as that mid wide receiver 3. Y'all know last week we went through and we took the Christian Watson fewer than 58.5 receiving yards on Underdog Fantasy. Now we're taking the other end of the spectrum. Now we're going to go Christian Watson more than 42.5 receiving yards. So yes, last week, less than 58.5. That hit. I'll flex on y'all once again for it. This week, we will go more than 42.5. You can start him if you want to. Probably not super excited about it. Did lead the team in targets with 8. Nobody else here in Green Bay is startable. Now, going over to Sam Howell, they have Sam Howell at 34.5 passing attempts, which is why, like, if this is the projection for Howell going forward, I think you have to be less excited about these receivers in Washington in general. I mean, going back to what you were looking at with Sam Howell over the past few weeks, it's a quarterback that's giving you 40, 50 passing attempts per game. So yeah, when you have that kind of passing volume, then sure. I mean, guys like Terry McLaurin are going to be exciting, but I would say if we have the passing volume coming down, even with no Curtis Samuel, I'm going to be fine going with fewer than 63.5 total yards for Terry McLaurin this week. He's someone that you can start as a low-end wide receiver too. I just think that projection in particular is probably a little bit too aggressive. And then obviously you can start Logan Thomas as one of just those, I mean, nasty tight end options we don't really care about. Do not start Mac Jones for the love of God. I know quarterback's gross this week, but still. You have Ramondre Stevenson at 70.5 total yards. You actually have the New England Patriots as 3-point favorites in this game. So you could possibly make an argument that, yeah, they're going to be able to run the ball in the second half. Very surprising. They're projecting out Ramondre for 70.5 total yards. Ezekiel Elliott at 41.5 total. So essentially 110 total yards coming from this backfield this week. I'd be a little less tent with it, but I mean, I think we can probably use that information and say, okay, yeah, go ahead and start Ramondre Stevenson. Obviously can't be too excited based off the Ezekiel Elliott usage. Now, going over to Rachaad White. This is a running back that they have at 80.5 total yards, 4 receptions for his higher lower. You have to start Rachaad White in that full PPR format based off the receiving usage. Godwin, you have to start as a wide receiver 2. Mike Evans, you have to start as a wide receiver 2 as well. They actually have Godwin projected for more points than Mike Evans this week, which I know Mike Evans has been much better than Godwin so far this season. Obviously, Evans has been a touchdown scoring machine. For that reason, I wouldn't mind if you wanted to go with the Mike Evans more than half a touchdown with the 1.5x multiplier. But honestly, it is going to be up to you there. I think you start both wide receivers. Cade Otton, not really appealing. We can skip by those guys. Stroud, they have at about 17 fantasy points. You can start Stroud if you want. Obviously, quarterback's very gross this week. Nico Collins, they have at 59.5 receiving yards. So this is, I mean, higher than some of those other receivers. Like if you're going like Rashee Rice or Nico Collins, clearly these projections would say you have to go Nico Collins. I mean, not even close. Tank Dell, 44.5 receiving yards. Tank Dell, someone that you're probably not too excited about. They only have him at 8.5 fantasy points. Now, going over to the Chicago game, you right now, according to Las Vegas sportsbooks, have the Bears as the second worst offense in the NFL this week, going up against the New Orleans Saints. If you're looking at their implied team total, probably not excited about starting anybody here. You don't start Roschon. You don't start Deonta Foreman. The only guy I would consider starting is DJ Moore. They have DJ Moore at 60.5 total yards. Do not start Darnell Mooney. And then also you can go Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet's actually been great this year. Obviously, it's just very difficult to project out this offense in particular with how bad it is. Now, going over to the running back situation, you're looking at Alvin Kamara for the Saints at 92.5 total yards. A must-start running back at this point. 4 receptions for his more than less than. If y'all wanted to go more than 4 receptions on Kamara, I'm not going to fault you for it. My issue is I think the passing volume may be down in this offense overall, as this spread on the game's like 8 points, right? 8.5 points. So it's not like they're going to have to throw the ball consistently in the second half. You have Olave at 63.5 total yards. You're probably going to have to start Olave. I mean, New Orleans is just going to score so many points. Start Olave, start Kamara. Nobody else here is too exciting. I mean, you could start Taysom Hill, specifically if you're playing in that non-PPR format. I'd be more excited about it. Now, going over to Minnesota, you'll see nobody startable here. You got Alexander Mattison at 56.5 total yards. You have Cam Akers at 34.5 total yards. This is a bottom 5 offense, according to Las Vegas sportsbooks this week with their implied team total. Jordan Addison, you only have at 45.5 total yards. TJ Hawkinson, really the only guy you can lean on. 47.5 receiving yards for his projected pick'em. So yeah, you can start Hawkinson. In reality, I'm just staying away from this offense where we can. Like we said, having no Cousins here is a massive negative impact. Now, going over to Atlanta, you have Bijan Robinson, 82.5 total yards. Bijan's still that running back that you have to start every single week, regardless, even if he has been disappointing in terms of him being that first-round pick. And you have no Drake London as well. So Kyle Pitts may be viable for you this week if you wanted to go in that direction. Jonathan Taylor, I wouldn't mind going with the more than 81.5 total yards, given the fact that you do have that great matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers, where they should be able to run the ball with success in the second half. You have Zach Moss currently at 52.5 total yards. So you can start Zach Moss, that low-end RB2, really just send up a prayer that he scores a touchdown. But the primary options are going to be Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor. We are going to continue to monitor Josh Downs. As of now, Downs is questionable. His underdog Pickems had 4.5 receptions, 53.5 receiving yards. I would say that I'm probably going to be hesitant to start Downs now that this knee injury is rolling this late into the week. I would rather go Rashee Rice over Josh Downs at this point, even if the Pickems would say to go on the downside. Now, going over to Carolina, Chuba Hubbard is a running back that I'd say you probably need to start, right? He's a starting running back. It's a fine matchup. Should be a decent amount of points scored in this game. They've met 62.5 total yards, which is fewer than Ramondre. I would actually probably rather start Chuba Hubbard than Ramondre Stevenson. And then obviously you are playing Adam Thielen here. Now, going over to the Dallas game. Dak Prescott, you have it 268.5 total yards. Very tough matchup going up against Philly. You have Tony Pollard at 80.5 total yards. You got to start Pollard, even if it is that brutal matchup against the Eagles. CeeDee Lamb, 72.5 total yards. Very simple in Dallas. You start Pollard, you start Lamb, you maybe start Dak if you don't have a better option. And then Jake Ferguson is also someone else that you can get in there if you look at his target volume. Now, one of the other pickems that I like this week on Underdog will be Jalen Hurts to have a rushing touchdown. It's something that we take more weeks than not. I will say it's a tougher matchup going up against Dallas. The main thing is, if you think that Jalen Hurts is injured and you're not going to get a full week out of a full rushing workload out of Hurts, you probably avoid him, but I'm going to start him. I'm going to take the more than half a rushing touchdown in general. And then also with Devonta Smith, I like Devonta Smith to have more than 48.5 total yards against the Dallas Cowboys here. He's young and a great offense and continues to draw target volume. Similar to what we were saying with CeeDee Lamb last week, we're going to continue to bang that drum. A player with that profile is someone that I want to be betting on, someone that I want to be excited about. Now, David coming out telling us that Darren Waller going to the IR as soon as we get to the Giants here. I mean, obviously, we weren't starting Darren Waller this week. You do start Saquon Barkley. They have pretty much close to 100 total yards. And then in this game, they're just going to be able to run the ball. The Raiders' offense should be very bad. I really have no idea what to expect with Aidan O'Connell here. I mean, obviously, you have the coaching staff change. You have a new general manager here and everything. But you have Josh Jacobs at 97.5 total yards. You have Devontae Adams at 72.5. You have Jacoby Myers at 52.5. I'd say you have to start Jacobs and Devontae Adams. When it comes to Jacoby Myers, it's more so depending on what you think of Aidan O'Connell. Now, going over to the Bills, Allen's over 300 total yards. Should be the second highest scoring game of the week besides Kansas City and Miami. You have James Cook at 70.5 total yards, which is very interesting. Going to be interested to see if you have Leonard Fournette playing this weekend. If that's the case, I would expect that James Cook is in a 3-man running back by committee. So I want to get confirmation that Leonard Fournette is going to be playing this week. And if he is, I would be fine going through and taking the fewer than 70.5 total yards for James Cook in a game where they're actually 2.5-point dogs, where they may not be able to run the ball in the second half. And then you have Dalton Kincaid up there at 38.5 receiving yards. So still not quite in the TJ Hawkinson range just yet, but still a tight end that you have to start and is a clear tier ahead of a lot of these other options. Now, going over to Cincinnati, you have Joe Mixon, 87.5 total yards. Have to start him. They have him ahead of guys like Pollard, Bijan, et cetera, et cetera. Should be a very high-scoring offense. You have touchdown opportunities as well. Chase, 87.5 total yards. Higgins, 49.5. I mean, obviously, you're starting Chase. It's more so with Higgins. Do you think he is fully healthy? Because, I mean, he didn't play all the snaps last week. So if he were to be fully healthy in a game where they're probably going to be throwing the ball a ton, I would be more excited about Higgins, but we just have to see it. Now, going over to the Chargers, you have Austin Eckler, 80.5 total yards. I know it's in New York. I know that it is a tough matchup against the Jets. I don't care. You're telling me no Mike Williams, no Joshua Palmer. I think Austin Eckler does go out there and have a ridiculous role as a receiver. I wouldn't mind going with more than 4 receptions. But overall, I'm just going to be taking him to have the yardage. I think that they heavily lean on the combination of Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen this week. And then obviously you're starting Breece Hall, probably having to start Garrett Wilson as well. They do have an aggressive mark on Wilson. But I think that should be about it for this live stream. I'm starving, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to go run and eat dinner. Then I'll be back to answer all your questions later tonight. So please just make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you have not done so already. Hook 'em horns, drop it in the comment section. And also, if y'all wanted to check out any of those Pickems over on Underdog Fantasy for this weekend, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section, in the live chat. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and the Lamar Jackson special pick of more than less than half a total yards. So make sure you are taking advantage of that, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you. I really hope you have a great day, and really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.